lesions and how we go for their diagnosis. So the oral mucosal lesions, they are a common complaint which are encountered in a day-to-day practice by the medical experts and the oral health physicians as well. And many of these entities, they are treated by antibiotics, mouthwashes, so and so forth, and thus leading them for a chronic cause. And the most common complications associated with these lesions are that they hamper the nutrition and affect the oral quality of life. And some of these conditions, such as pemphigus vulgaris, may in turn lead to a cause of death because of electrolyte imbalance and staph and candida superimposed infections. So to avoid these mishappenings, we need to have a definitive diagnosis and thereby arrive at a treatment plan. So to begin with, a brief introduction about what actually oral mucosa is. It is the mucous membrane lining that lines the inside of the oral cavity. And at the interior aspect, that is the lips, it is continuous with the skin at the vermilion border. And at the posterior aspect, that is pharynx, it is continuous with the moist mucosa which lines the gastrointestinal tract. Coming to the basic functions, it helps in protection of deeper tissues, excretion of salivary components, preventing xerostomia, and by help of various corpuscles and receptors, it helps in temperature regulation, taste, touch, pain and thirst regulation, and absorption excretion of various metabolites. And these days, the concern of aesthetics has come up a big way, and we have entire course of aesthetic dentistry. So one other major function of oral mucosa is aesthetics. Now, coming to the type of mucosa, I'll try to simplify by this diagrammatic representation. The majority of the oral cavity is comprised of the lining mucosa or the non-keratinized mucosa, which is shown by the gray shading. And it constitutes for about 60% of the mucous membrane lining of the oral cavity. And the labile mucosa, that is the buccal mucosa, labial mucosa, inferior aspect of tongue, floor of the mouth, and the soft palate is primarily comprised by the lining mucosa. Coming to the masticatory mucosa or the non-keratinized mucosa, it comprises of around 20% and predominantly covers the gingiva and the hard palate. Other than these two basic mucosa, we have specialized mucosa, especially the taste buds and the dorsum of tongue, which comprises of 15% of the mucosa covering the oral cavity. So this is a brief overview of what all the oral cavity is comprised of, including their mucous membrane lining. Now, coming to a brief classification about how we go for classification of oral mucosal ulcerative lesions. There are two basic types. First is the clinical features, which depends upon the number, onset, and the associated manifestations and pathogenesis. And the second clinical entity on the basis of which we can classify these lesions is whether these lesions are accompanied by fluid-filled vesicles or bulla, or they directly result in formation of a lesion without the preceding fluid-filled vesicles or bullae. So we know that vesicle is a lesion, elevated lesion, which is less than 1 centimeter in diameter, and mostly it is comprised of clear fluid. And when these vesicles enlarge more than 1 centimeter, they are known as bullae. In the oral cavity, the presence of these intact vesicles is very, very uncommon. There is only one condition in which in the oral cavity we come across intact vesicle, that is mucous membrane pemphigoid. Most of these vesicles, as soon as they form, they rupture because of the functionality of the oral mucosa during brushing, eating, chewing, and so on and so forth. And also the there is disturbance. And
Please see that if you are not muted, please mute your audio.
And also the moisture in the oral cavity prevents them from further enlarging. So on these two bases, we go for the classification of oral mucosal lesions. This is a pictorial representation. Basically, these lesions, based on the number, onset, and clinical manifestations and pathogenesis, they are divided into three basic types. Acute lesions, which persist for up to 2 to 15 days. And then chronic lesions, which are more than 15 days in duration. And the recurrent lesions, that is, they have episodes of recurrent within 15 days, 20 days, month, 6 months, but they have episodes of recurrence. And then based on the number. So first was the onset or duration, acute, chronic, and recurrent. And then we further classify into the number, that is acute solitary or acute multiple, chronic solitary and chronic multiple. And in the recurrent, we may have either single lesion or multiple lesion. A point to notice in these lesions is that majority of these immune mediated viral infections, they are mostly acute in nature, whereas the bacterial lesions, they are mostly chronic in nature. Majority of the mucocutaneous disorders like pemphigus vulgaris, MMP, bullous pemphigoid, and lichen planus, they are chronic multiple in nature. The next way to classify is whether these lesions are preceded by vesicles or they directly form into a lesion. On this basis, we may further classify to infections. As I previously mentioned, majority of the infections which are acute in nature, preceded by vesicles, they are mostly viral in nature. Whereas the immunological, which are preceded by vesicle formation, includes your chronic lesions like pemphigus vulgaris, mucous membrane pemphigoid, and erythema multiforme. The lesions which directly form without preceding vesicles are infectious etiology, primarily chronic in nature, that is bacterial and fungal, immunological mediated, like recurrent aphthous stomatitis, oral lichen planus, a number of allergic reactions like plasma cell gingivitis, allergic stomatitis, and lupus erythematosus. Next is your trauma and followed by neoplasia. So this is the broad classification under which we classify the oral mucosal lesions. First is the clinical features, that is number, duration, and onset, and pathogenesis. Second, whether these lesions are preceded by vesicles or they directly form without accompanying vesicle. Now coming to brief about how these lesions appear and how can we differentiate between other entities. The first entity that will be discussed is traumatic oral lesions. And in these, there is definitely a source of trauma, either acute trauma or chronic trauma, either trauma from your sharp cusp of tooth or ill-fitting dentures, denture flanges, orthodontic appliances, or factitious lip or cheek biting. So based on these, traumatic ulcer, which can be acute or chronic, depending upon whether the duration is acute or chronic. The offending cause in this picture, we see an traumatic ulcer on the lateral aspect of the tongue, which is the most common site of such ulcers, including the buccal mucosa. We see a sharp cusp of the tooth, offending tooth, that is causing these ulcerations. Cheek biting, we see that there is a history of continuous biting of cheek between the upper and the lower teeth, and this cheek biting mostly present at the level of occlusal plane, because that's probably the commonest site where the cheek mucosa comes in between these maxillary and mandibular teeth. Irritational fibroma, there is a dome-shaped swelling on the retrocommissural region and on the buccal mucosa. These lesions may be differentiated from mucocele, which I'll be further discussing. The irritational fibroma and mucocele can be differentiated, although they have a common etiology, that is trauma. In that mucosal case, the most common site is the lip mucosa or the labial mucosa, where there is preponderance of the minor salivary gland, whereas the rotational fibroma or the traumatic fibroma is mostly seen at the buccal mucosa or retrocommissural area of the oral cavity. Next is traumatic keratosis or frictional keratosis. Is mostly present at the retromolar region where there is offending maxillary or mandibular third molar, and where there we see a diffuse area of hyperkeratinization at the retrocommissural area, at the retromolar area and the buccal mucosa. Next entity is the thermal burn. Most common site is the palate, and this may result from hot food, most common cause. Also, these days it is represented by pizza burn, because that's the common site after the tongue. The hot particles or the hot food particles sticks to the palatal mucosa. In this case, there is a diffuse erythema and inflammation on the palatal aspect of attached and marginal gingiva on the maxilla. A number of patients come with chemical burns, and on clinical examination, we see a diffuse area of erythema, and this covered by slough or pseudomembrane. Most commonly, the use of tobacco quid, or these lesions may also be known as limetuous mucosa. And some patients also prefer to put clove in these sites to prevent toothache, and excessive use of clove oil or directly may lead to such lesions. Next, mucocele, I've already discussed the site because of preponderance of the minor salivary glands. These are dome-shaped bluish lesions, whereas rotational fibroma, apart from the site, these lesions are not bluish in color, and they are almost the same color as the normal mucosa. Next lesion in the traumatic category is epulis fissuratum, because of the ill-fitting flanges of the denture, mostly maxillary, followed by mandibular, and premolar to molar area is the commonest site. And this is basically a low-grade chronic irritation or chronic trauma to the mucosa, which results in a compensatory mechanism, and patient will always give a history of denture use in such patients to come to a conclusive diagnosis. Another category, that is Leishman syndrome, it usually occurs in patients with neurovascular disorders, and mostly the child patients, they have a history of lip biting. Next entity is Rigafidi ulcer or the Rigafidi disease. The most common site, it usually occurs in infants who are born with the natal teeth, that is child born with the teeth present. These are known as natal teeth, and because of these natal teeth, there is ulceration on the ventral aspect of the tongue. These lesions usually resolve after the removal of the offending cause. The next category in this lesions are the tobacco associated oral lesions. Tobacco, as we know that India is a developing nation, and where the use of tobacco, either smokeless or smoking form, is quite prevalent. And the majority of the lesions that have associated tobacco etiology includes smokers melanosis. In this picture, we see a diffuse area of hyperpigmentation on the buccal mucosa and retrocommissural region. Definitely, we have to rule out a history of smoking, and these lesions need to be differentiated from physiological pigmentation or pigmentation due to use of any drug or chemical. However, when we elicit a history of tobacco smoking, then definitely we go for a diagnosis of smokers melanosis. Next is smoker's palate. There is a diffuse grayish white lesion on the palate, including almost the entire half of the palate, and these are superimposed by area of mild hyperkeratinization. The tiny dots which we see on the palate, these are nothing but openings of minor salivary glands. When the patient has a history of keeping the quid either in the buccal sulcus or the labial sulcus, and we see a characteristic appearance like this: diffuse area of hyperkeratinization and sloughing. Make sure that when you go for a diagnosis of tobacco pouch keratosis, the vestibular area has to be involved. Else, your diagnosis will be just Lyme tuous mucosa. And when you'll give a diagnosis of tobacco pouch keratosis only when you see a pouch like lesion involving the labial or the buccal mucosa and vestibule along with the alveolar mucosa. These are typical uh, representation of beetle nut incrustations, and if you ask the patient to go for a mouth rinse, these lesions will resolve. Next lesion in this category is erythroplakia, which the most common site is the palate. Although these patients are heavy smokers, but they might also be seen in the non-smokers. And this lesion is a high malignant potential, and these lesions should be differentiated from erythematous candidiasis, factitial thermal burns, or oral fellatio. Hence, history is mandatory to elicit. Also, these lesions of erythroplakia, these are very, very rare to encounter in the oral cavity. Next lesion, which we come across on a regular basis, is leukoplakia. Leukoplakia, according to the World Health Organization, is now a disorder of exclusion, and it appears as a white entity and which cannot be differentiated clinically or histologically as any other disorder. And the various forms are homogeneous, heterogeneous or speckled, verrucous leukoplakia, and proliferative verrucous leukoplakia. A history of smoking form is essential for leukoplakia, and when we go for a differential diagnosis, these lesions should be differentiated from leukoedema, which is a normal developmental variation from the normal mucosa, and these lesions, that is the leukoedema lesions, will disappear when we ask the patient to stretch the buccal mucosa, whereas the leukoplakic lesions will be present. And the dreaded complication is the carcinoma, and the most common sites is the floor of the mouth, where we see a characteristic ebbing tide appearance, like the ocean waves slightly rise and then a depression, as clinically seen in this picture. And the lesions, these lesions are also known as sublingual keratosis. So another point of differentiation between leukoplakia is lichen planus. Both are white in nature, but the lesions of leukoplakia are slightly elevated. History of smoking is essential, and the lesions are either unilateral or bilateral, whereas the reticular pattern of oral lichen planus has to be bilateral in nature, symmetrical lesions, and characteristic interlacing white striae. And the lesions, as the name suggests, the planus in Latin means flat. So the lesions of oral lichen planus will be well merged with the mucosa, whereas leukoplakic lesions are slightly elevated. And these are more commonly seen at the retrocommissural region, more anteriorly in the oral cavity, whereas the lichen planus lesions are mostly posteriorly on the buccal mucosa. Next entity is oral submucous fibrosis, which is due to the intake of areca nut or gutka chewing. And they can be, these days it is classified as a collagen disorder, because the arecoline or arecodine along with copper, this causes fibrosis in the underlying connective tissue and reduced vasculature. And the manifestations may be divided broadly into initial stage and the advanced or the late stage. In the initial stage, we just have paleness or blanching of the buccal mucosa and erythema, vesicles, or xerostomia with mild burning sensations. Whereas when the lesion extends to the connective tissue, that is an advanced stage, because of the ongoing fibrosis, there is restriction of mouth opening, as manifested in this picture. There is deep appellation on the tongue with decreased protrusive tongue movements. The uvula becomes bud-shaped because of shrunken in nature, and the dreaded complication is carcinoma. Rarely, oral submucous fibrosis presents with an associated carcinoma, and when the carcinoma is proven histologically along with clinically proven oral submucous fibrosis, it is the most dreaded complication. And these lesions, that is oral submucous fibrosis, needs to be differentiated from localized anemia, because anemia also has pale blanching of mucosa, deep appellation of the tongue, and burning sensations. Again, a point to note in the etiology of oral submucous fibrosis, although the main etiology is tobacco, that is ericonine and ericodine, but nutritional deficiencies such as iron and vitamins deficiency may also be a contributor factor in the etiopathogenesis of oral submucous fibrosis. So these lesions needs to be differentiated. Another differentiating entity with oral submucous fibrosis is localized scleroderma, because in scleroderma, that is a connective tissue disorder, there is restriction of mouth opening and tongue protrusive. However, these lesions, that is the lesions of scleroderma, may be differentiated because they are associated with skin lesions and other manifestations as well, typically claw-like hands, adherent skin over the extremities, and Raynaud's phenomenon. So most of these lesions are associated with the underlying etiology. Coming to the immune-mediated mucocutaneous disorders, we have major, minor, and herpetiform ulcers. And the basic difference is based on the size and depth. That is, the minor lesions are mostly present on the labial mucosa, less than 1 centimeter in diameter, whereas the major aphthous heal with scarring, and they are more than 1 centimeter in diameter, mostly present on the keratinized mucosa, whereas the herpetiform ulcers presents in a crop of 50 to 100 ulcers. Most common site is the ventral aspect of the tongue. And only a few lesions in the oral cavity heal with scarring. One of them is major aphthous, also known as Sutton's disease. I'll just share it again. Okay. So the other lesions in the oral cavity which heal with scarring include your mucous membrane pemphigoid, hence the name cicatricial pemphigoid. Okay. The next immune-mediated etiology includes your oral lichen planus, and the Anderson's classification classifies oral lichen planus into 6 basic categories, that is reticular type, erosive, atrophic, ulcerated, plaque-like, and bullous-like lesions. The most common lesions in this category are the reticular oral lichen planus, which includes your bilateral symmetrical interlacing white striae, also known as Wickham's tree. The differential diagnosis I've already mentioned with leukoplakia and lichenoid reaction. To distinguish it with oral lichenoid reaction, these oral lichenoid reactions are mostly unilateral, whereas the reticular OLP are bilateral symmetrical, and there is a definitive etiology associated with lichenoid reaction, that is either an associated amalgam restoration or the use of drug intake, whereas these reticular type, they have an immune etiology without an exact cause. And once we remove the amalgam restoration or we discontinue the drug, the lesions in the lichenoid reaction will disappear. Also, if the patient presents with these interlacing striae in the oral cavity and he or she doesn't have any manifestation, you just need to put the patient on a regular follow-up without giving any treatment. Just keep reviewing the patient so that the lesion doesn't get deteriorated. And the least common form in the oral cavity is the bullous lichen planus, which is very, very rare. And in between these reticular and bullous lichen planus, other majority of
Yeah, Dr.
clinical
Shami,
entities.
1 second. Just a few participants have not entered. I'll just make them enter. 1 second.
Sure, sure, I'll wait.
Because since I made you the host, uh, yeah. Yeah, I think, yes. Okay, fine. 1 second. Yeah. Dr. Shami, you can restart.
Okay. So the entities which are intermediate between these reticular and the bullous forms includes your erosive, atrophic, and ulcerated. Point to remember is that in the plaque-like oral lichen planus, the lesions are mostly restricted to the dorsal aspect of tongue. We see an adherent layer of interlacing white striae, and these lesions needs to be distinguished with candidiasis and leukoplakia. And the clinical diagnosis of lichen planus is based on the interlacing white striae, also known as Wickham's tree, but there may be situations where the clinical picture is not representative of the lesion and there is a plethora of lesions. So then we go for a biopsy followed by immunofluorescence. The basic histopath includes your acanthotic epithelium with lymphocytic infiltration and sawtooth retipex with a band of infiltration. And when we go for a direct immunofluorescence, we have a shaggy band of fibrinogen. Only in cases of reticular lichen planus, a clinical diagnosis is sufficient. Next lesion in this category includes your pemphigus vulgaris, which is a chronic debilitating entity, which has multiple ulcers, and these ulcers may coalesce to form erosions. In this is one of the patient that was came to our hospital with multiple lesions in the oral cavity. On clinical examination, there was multiple erosive lesions on the right and left buccal mucosa, similar lesion on the lower lip extending up to the vermilion border, and there was a positive Nikolsky sign when we pressed the normal skin. Then it resulted in a bleb-like lesion, which is characteristic for pemphigus vulgaris, although it may be present in erythema multiforme, that is, the moment it forms, it ruptures. Whereas the lesions in the mucous membrane pemphigoid is an intact vesicle. Very rarely an intact vesicle is recorded in a patient with oral mucosal lesions. And hospital. And the definitive diagnosis between these two lesions, besides the clinical differentiating features, is histopath. Next lesion is erythema multiforme, which is an acute maculopapular lesion, whereas pemphigus, pemphigoid, lichen planus, these are chronic in nature. And these lesions have a characteristic preponderance to both skin and oral cavity. The characteristic lesions on the lip are typical hemorrhagic crusting on the lips with some erosive lesions in the buccal mucosa and tongue. And on the extremities, we see a characteristic bullseye appearance or target lesions where there is central area of erythema surrounded by pale concentric laminations. Infections, mostly bacterial, viral, and fungal. So coming to the bacterial infections, the most common bacterial infection is a plaque-associated biofilm, which is manifest in patients with poor oral hygiene as gingivitis, bleeding on probing, foul, fetid smell, and tenderness in the gingiva, characteristic features for gingivitis. And when these lesions they percolate down to your supporting structures, that is periodontium, it manifests in the form of periodontitis. The clinical entities that contribute to periodontitis is mobility of tooth, gingival recession, and periodontal pocket, which is nothing but deepening of the gingival sulcus. And these gingivitis and periodontitis may have a combination of gram-positive bacteria and gram-negative bacteria, and thorough scaling and root planing is sufficient to get away with these lesions. Next is acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, also known as trench mouth. It manifests mostly in patients with stress, poor oral hygiene, and the clinical features includes your crater-like ulcerations surrounded by pseudomembrane, full fetid odor, and tooth mobility. A common entity which we see in the oral cavity is inflamed flap covering the impacted, covering the impacted third molar, that is pericoronitis. And in some patients, if the food lodgement is severe, it may accentuate to your pericoronal abscess. Just you need to, the foremost or cornerstone of treatment in patients with pericoronitis is just remove the etiology, that is extraction of the third molar, followed by operculectomy and debridement of the sulcus cavity. Next is scarlet fever. It's due to Streptococcus pyogenes infection and mostly presents with constitutional symptoms such as fever, sore throat, and this oral lesions, that is strawberry tongue or magenta tongue, is very, very rare. And we have a body rash associated with such lesions as well. Another bacterial lesion is leprosy, which is very rarely seen in the oral cavity. It is due to when the infection lepromatous bacilli, they percolate down into your oral cavity. Most common site is your palate, where it manifests as a papulonodular lesion. These lesions are very, very rare. Tuberculosis may manifest in the form of an ulcer, which the characteristic feature is an undermined or matted appearance, desquamative gingivitis, and enlargement of the gingiva. These gingival enlargement may be differentiated based on the history of a drug intake, either phenytoin, carbamazepine, and calcium channel blockers. And patient with tuberculosis will give a history of systemic association, evening rise of temperature, then evening rise of temperature, loss of weight, persistent cough for more than 2 weeks. Very, very rare tuberculous lesions affect the oral cavity on a sole basis. Next lesion is a treponema infection named syphilis, which may be divided into primary, secondary, and tertiary. Chancre is the characteristic feature in the primary lesions, mucus patches or pseudoragetes in the secondary, whereas perforation or of the palate may be seen in gummatous lesions in tertiary syphilis. As such, syphilis these days is obsolete because of the advancements in antibiotics, and oral lesions in syphilis is very, very rare. Coming to the common viral infections, they are preceded by vesicle formation. They are acute in nature, primarily herpetic gingivostomatitis, mostly seen in children and may also be seen in young adults. The characteristic features are pinpoint ulcerations, multiple ulcerations in the oral cavity, mostly on the labile mucosa, and marginal gingivitis. Submandibular lymph nodes are also associated. So these three cardinal symptoms, that is pinpoint multiple ulcerations in the oral cavity, marginal gingivitis, and submandibular lymphadenopathy, suffice the diagnosis of herpetic gingival stomatitis. And another point to remember is when we differentiate it from recurrent aphthous stomatitis, which are closer entity, history of prodromal symptoms will be absent in patients with recurrent aphthous stomatitis. That is, fever, malaise, sore throat will not be present, whereas it will be present in patients with herpetic gingivostomatitis. Patients will have constitutional symptoms. And second point of differentiation is that the lesions directly appear in recurrent aphthous stomatitis without an associated or preceding vesicle formation. And when these lesions, most of the time, they remain dormant, and when they flare up, they affect the dermatomes and primarily manifesting at the mucocutaneous junction, where it presents as recurrent herpes labialis. Coming to the varicella zoster infection, the characteristic feature is that the accompanying skin lesions are present in more than 95% of the patient. And the lesions are unilateral. They do not cross the dermatome. Multiple crusted lesions in this patient, mostly affecting the ophthalmic, mandibular, and maxillary divisions of the trigeminal nerve. And a dreaded complication may be post-herpetic neuralgia. These lesions are usually diagnosed on the basis of unilaterality associated with accompanying skin lesions. The last lesion is a fungal entity, that is oral candidiasis, which manifests in the form of various lesions in the oral cavity. Usually, candidiasis is a commensal organism. However, when the immunity of the individual is suppressed, either due to xerostomia, radiation therapy, or some underlying immune-mediated pathology, these lesions flare up and manifest in the form of oral thrush, mostly in children, may also be seen in adults. Erythematous candidiasis, most common site is palate. Denture-induced lesions like denture stomatitis, which manifests in three forms. First is palatal hyperemia. Second is diffuse inflammation of denture bearing area. And third is palatal papillary hyperplasia. And the last lesion in this category is angular cheilitis, where bilateral fissuring of the oral commissures is seen, and this may be also be seen other than candida infection associated staph aureus infection, vertical dimension, loss of vertical dimension because of loss of posteriority, and nutritional deficiency. These lesions, apart from your clinical diagnosis, may also be differentiated or diagnosed on the basis of your KOH, that is potassium hydroxide staining, where we see a fungal hyphae. So this was in brief about the basic oral mucosal lesions. And to conclude, we need to explore different conditions which are responsible for oral ulcerations and come to their definitive diagnosis so as to institute a definitive treatment protocol. These are my references, and I am open to questions, please.
Yeah, dear students, you can come out with your questions for our speaker. Whatever doubts you have, you can enter it in the chat box. And Steffi, I think you can take up the questions also. So meanwhile, Dr. Shamim, I would like to ask a query. What is the manifestation of the food allergy or the toothpaste allergy which manifests in the oral cavity? How does it look like?
Okay, so for allergic reaction, patient history is mandatory to elicit. Patient will always give a history that he or she has, recent switched off her toothpaste, toothbrush, or any food substance, a new food substance has been incorporated in his or her diet regimen. So history is mandatory. Other than that, how the lesion appears, it mostly appears on the contact areas of the, allergen, contact area of the allergen. So it may manifest either because of your toothbrush, it may manifest as a toothbrush allergy, area of redness, mostly on the buccal mucosa and the labial mucosa. If it is because of your toothpaste, it will manifest as diffuse rhythm of gingiva, because that's probably the closest point of contact with the toothpaste, plasma cell gingivitis.
Right. So it is mostly erythematous area
Erythematous, definitely erythematous. Yeah, no hyperkeratinization, because hyperkeratinization will take some time to happen.
Okay, got it. Right. Steffi, is there any questions? I don't see. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions so far. Yeah, I think the presentation was too elaborate. So it was a very informative presentation for our students. So I think, Dr. Reno, you can take up for the winding up session. Dr. Reno?
Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks. On behalf of Department of Public Health Dentistry, I take this opportunity to express my gratitude to our renowned speaker, Dr. Shamimul Hassan, Professor, Department of Oral Medicine, Jamia Millia Islamia Dental College, New Delhi, for his excellent presentation, which has enlightened our students. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here with the organizing team. Thank you, Dr. Bentley. Yeah, you are.
Okay. Now I would like to thank Dr. Bentley George, Vice Principal and Head of the Department, for his constant support. Also, I express my gratitude towards the third year's final year part 1 students, especially the coordinator, Steffi Sargent. Then our next program will be in few days' time on Botox in dentistry. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shamim. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bentley and the organizing team. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. It was great to have you here for our webinar series. Also, especially you have been under a master PG coordinator, Dr. Jnana Sundaram. So definitely good to have you as a speaker.
Same here. My pleasure.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Also, we just would like to have the 1 second. I'll just the certificate. I just wanted to. Can't minimize it. One second.